Were there any attempts to overthrow it?
What Stalin did especially was he wanted to atomize society as much as possible. So he wanted right away, if something happens to you, your spouse is in danger, right? And your kids are in danger. So any kind of private relationship was a threat to the public sphere. So he did everything in his power to make sure that there were none of these private links, what we call civil society, which make up the basis of a thriving country, where, you know, if there's a crime, instead of necessarily worrying about the cops getting there in time, you have the neighborhood watch, you have neighbors like looking after have you seen my daughter? Have you seen, this is where I saw him, that kind of thing. Now, any kind of link is dangerous. It's inverted, because now if I'm arrested and I'm told, okay, we know for a fact you're a traitor, you're an enemy of the people, you're a Trotskyite. Who were the 10 people you were colluding with? Well, I talked to you today for an hour and a half, so your name's going to be first on that list, because I need to give them 10 names. And the better names I give them are people I had long conversations with. So the incentives became completely perverted, under the Soviet Union and the Allied countries.
A bit. So I watched that film, The Lives of Others.
Oh, yes.
So like that.
Yes. Yeah. The Stasi were in many ways very different and in some ways more pernicious than the Soviet Union.
So what drove Stalin? Was it pure ideologies? Yeah.
I don't think he was a particular ideologue. There's no question that Lenin and especially Trotsky were these kind of cerebral, philosophical types. He was a bank robber. He was like a thug, in his youth. He was never this kind of great ideological intellect. It's very hard for us and he had members of his own family arrested. So this wasn't, some kind of complete hypocrisy. He is not as a fully fleshed out character in this book as some of the other people, because it's almost impossible, I think, to get inside his head. Because even with Hitler, it's like, okay, you're driven by hatred of the Jews. You have this vision of Germany conquering the world. That's not a very complicated mindset to get into. Him, a lot of it makes a lot less sense, and just in terms of internal logic.
How are Lenin and Stalin both considered in modern Russia?
I think my understanding is that Stalin is having a bit of a renaissance, because he is kind of this vision of when Russia was this. I mean, Russians complain, and I think fairly, that they don't get enough credit for being Hitler. Because if you look at the cost of lives that the Russians gave versus Americans, I think it's like 100 to 1. It's some crazy, different metric. They got to the bunker first. They were raising the hammer and sickle over the bunker. It wasn't the Stars and Stripes. Now, a lot of these lives were lost because Stalin fucked it up really badly, and he was called to task for this after he died. And they were sending soldiers into a battle without even bullets. So they were just getting mowed down. Just, your life was just worth even a bullet from the Germans. So there was some really crazy things going on. And when Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa and invaded Russia, Stalin couldn't believe he was betrayed, and they lost days just doing nothing because he was just shocked and just sat on his hands. So that is a big, I think, historical something that they view as an injustice, that we're not getting the credit for this. We're the ones who won World War II against the Nazis. Lenin, I think, is there's still controversy. He's mummified in Red Square in his tomb there. Should we finally bury the guy after 100 years? It's actually over 100 years. Oh no, 1924 he died, I believe. So, but you'd have to ask them. I think there's much more of a fondness, not necessarily for them as individuals, but for when the USSR was a rival superpower to the US, and the entire world was, we were one of the two big guys. And part of the reason I wrote the book, and I don't really have I have a hypothesis, I don't have a great one, is this for the West was the unquestioned number one foreign policy concern for 50 years, right? Everything that was done in foreign policy in Western circles and Western politics was, all right, what does this mean in terms of our rivalry or animosity with the Soviet Union? Military buildup, are we going to this country? What are their interests? What are ours? How are we going to fight them? And now it's just kind of like this never ever happened. And it's very bizarre, because we'll talk more about the Civil War or World War II, than about this Cold War, because the narrative isn't easy. It's not really, because in many ways the bad guys are, like I said earlier, the organizations that are still in place today, and that's part of the reason why I wrote this book, so people can understand this was the entire world for decades, and it's just completely being forgotten, which is something, out of 1984, like they could just vanish, decades of history.
Well, you can't help but, like, everybody knows the horrors of World War II under
Right.
Nazi Germany. And countless films have been made. You learn it at school. It's still talked about today, even to the point where I know German people are still embarrassed about it today. To people who weren't even alive during World War II. The first, I have an understanding of life under the USSR was tough, but the first I heard about this was you telling me you're writing the book.
Yeah, and again, as someone who's from there, the fact that I didn't know any of this is something that's like, how is that the case? Like, when I started writing this book, I didn't know why it was such a big deal that the Berlin Wall fell. Like, we knew, okay, there was this wall and, divide East and West Berlin, and okay, it was cool, it fell. Like, what that meant and why this was like one of the biggest deals, and why, like, when I was writing that chapter, I was crying. It's like, until I was writing, I'm like, this is just this amazingly miraculous, beautiful story of the victory of peace over oppression. And it's just like, oh yeah, there was this wall and then it fell. It's almost like some kind of construction site, and you had this, there was a wall and they knocked it down. You can watch a GIF of it. It's very bizarre.
I mean, that might be an age thing as well, because I remember when the wall came down. I mean, I probably was, 12 or something, 30. I wasn't particularly old. I didn't understand why this wall was there.
Yeah, but you weren't in Auschwitz.
No. But what I mean is, like, I wasn't educated as to why there was an East and West Berlin. I didn't understand why, Berlin had been split after World War II and who controlled. I just didn't know any of it.
But that's the whole point. This was in our lifetime. Yeah. I didn't know that either, really, to that extent. But we know why we fought Hitler, right? Yes. We knew why we teamed up with Stalin to fight Hitler. Why the Berlin Wall was built is not something that's common knowledge, which is crazy to me.
Do you believe it's to do, therefore, as Stalin supported the West, it was kind of ignored? And do you believe that there was as much reason to perhaps send troops into Russia as there was to send them into Nazi Germany?
World War II is obviously an extremely complicated, tricky situation. My buddy Curtis Yarvin has this quip about which genocidal ideology should I be more concerned about, the one that won or the one that lost?
Jesus,
and there's Pat Buchanan, I think, wrote a book arguing that if we stayed out of World War II, we should just let them kill each other off and then just pick off the one who was left. I'm not a strategist. And part of the reason I wrote this is the atrocities of the Nazis are taken for granted. It's just a given that this is just an abomination. What this kind of complements is this guy that we were teaming up with, during World War II, he's no angel. And I think there's an understanding he's like a brutal dictator, but we kind of think of brutal dictators like, you have to have long hours at the factory and you're kind of hungry and then you can't really criticize him in the media. It's so much more pervasive and insidious than that. And, the tagline for the book is, it's almost impossible to explain to free people what it's like to live in a totalitarian dictatorship. And it really is. And I tried my best to replicate what that feeling is like, where literally every aspect of everything you do has to be viewed through the lens of politics. Who am I talking to? How much can I trust them? What am I saying? You know how, like, sometimes you leave a job interview, or like this happens to everyone I know who's done Rogan. They leave Rogan and they think, fuck, what did I say? Because it's 3 hours and you're like, something's going to be pulled. Like, did I just fuck up my career? But imagine if that's your case with literally everyone you talk to.
Yeah.
Every person you meet has the power to call in the secret police, and you have to worry that night, are they going to come and take me away? And I'm going to have no resources to fight this situation, and what that does to you. It's something I don't think any of us in the West are able to emotionally wrap our heads around.
Well, you have no ability to have your own identity.
Right, because the whole point of collectivism is to minimize the power of the individual.
Yeah.
And you might say that's a good thing. You don't want Elon Musk or Bill Gates or George Soros or Donald Trump, being able to, snap his fingers and people live or die. And you could understand that. But then it's like, wait, if you're saying the powerlessness of the individual, think about everyone listening to this, what that would mean is if you were powerless, if you don't have choice over where you work, what you read, what music you listen to, who you talk to, where you live, and what that would mean to you and how that would affect your day-to-day existence.
And constant fear that you might end up being arrested, tortured, sent to prison for something.
Or even just give it
an opinion.
But it doesn't even have to be that bad. It could be that if I'm at work and my boss is a dick and I just raise my voice to him, tomorrow I'm working in a mine. It doesn't have to be a prison. It could be like, I have a nice job, and today you're a podcaster, and tomorrow you have to be working in a fast food restaurant. Now, it's not the end of the world. They didn't have fast food restaurants, but you know what I mean? Like you're washing dishes. But to have that sense of like everything I have, the very little I have, can be taken away at any time for any reason, and I will have nothing I could do about it.
And did you speak to many people in researching the book who actually lived through this?
No. This was, I had plenty of background from my work with North Korea,
right,
and having visited North Korea, which is the closest analog you're going to have on the earth today to kind of living there in these times.
When did you go to North Korea?
2012. You've never been? It's the new Milan.
Yeah. No, I fancied it. Do you know what? There was a time I used to run a lot.
Oh, the marathon, the Pyongyang Marathon.
I used to run a lot, and I got inspired by this podcaster called Rich Roll, who's like an ultra athlete. And I was like, right, I'm going to run the 10 most dangerous marathons in the world. Like in my head, I was going to do Afghanistan. I was going to do North Korea.
Why is North Korea dangerous?
Well, just, in the thing in people's minds of like these dangerous countries, This is what I was going to do Sudan. And then I put my back out and I had to stop running. That was years ago. But no, I did fancy going. There's actually a crypto guy, who's got arrested over there for going to teach how to use cryptocurrency. So did you enjoy it?
Oh, yeah.
Because it was so weird and different?
Well, it was the closest I could have of an experience of seeing my family went through back in the day.
Right.
And also the thing that does a number on you is how normal the people are. So when you see that these are just regular human beings, and just how that's the scary part. And they're in this gigantic prison. It'll be better, because there's this kind of low-key racism in the West. Asians are weird, like Japan, like I want to go to Japan, but I know the culture is going to be like going to another planet. So you're kind of like, okay, they're different from us. And then when you go there and they're cracking jokes, your guys are cracking jokes, and you're like, holy shit, there's so much more just even banal than you expect. And that just makes the nightmare that much worse.
Yeah, I guess the closest I would ever have been, I went to Venezuela a few years ago.
Okay.
At least they have the freedom to leave across the border. A lot of people I went to Cucuta at the border in Colombia, where people were coming in and out to try and get certain goods. But I also got to go in and experience, and just little things. When you get out of East Caracas, which is kind of the cosmopolitan part of the city, we stumbled across a huge government march. There was, Chavez murals and Maduro murals everywhere. Everybody is supported by like a food basket from the state. That's the closest I got to it. But I think the horrors there are more the difficulty people have in earning wages, but they become resourceful. I don't think it's anywhere near as, horrific as of what you wrote about.
It's also that I'm sure they have internet there, right?
They do.
Yeah, so they don't have internet. They don't have access to the outside world. So that kind of complete control of information is something that is really very much surreal. And when Prav, the newspaper, which is called Truth in English, is telling you one thing, and then as soon as you have information about the rest of the world, it's like, wait a minute, something's not adding up here. And that was very key to bringing down these regimes.
Yeah, my friend Alex Gladstein works at Human Rights Foundation.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Do you know Alex?
No.
I think you'd really enjoy interviewing him. He's amazing. They did a project called Flashcards for Freedom. And what they would do is get memory sticks with Western films, Western culture, and they would have these distributed in North Korea. And this was a way to get people so they could actually see what life is like outside of North Korea. Because a lot of people have no idea, I guess. And that's what would drive people to at least try and escape. There's horrific stories of people trying to escape.
And there's this supermarket in Houston, which is still there. It's I think it was a Key Food, now it's a Marshall's or something like that. And or Randall's, excuse me. It was a Randall's and that's whatever. Boris Yeltsin, who was kind of Gorbachev's rival towards the end, he went to NASA. And while he was there, he's like, let me go to the supermarket. And there's, photos of him there, and he's looking around. And he's seeing the amount of items on the shelves is something he'd never seen in his life. and he's seeing that the people there are just like school teachers, cab drivers, truckers. These aren't some kind of dignitaries. And I think one of the people describing it said, oh, they seem to be particularly shocked at the size of the radishes or something like that. And you see these pictures and he's just walking around. And the thing that was really kind of jarring is he went from there to Miami, I guess, back to the USSR. And on the plane, he's holding his head in his hands. And he's like, they had to lie to us because they knew if we saw what was going on here, that it would all go to shit. Oh yeah, that's the photo. I'm going to go to that supermarket. I'm just going to start bawling because he's there. But the thing is, imagine what that's like, Peter. You're a major, I think he was like the equivalent of mayor at Moscow at the time.
Yeah.
You're on that flight and you realize everything I've been told is a lie. And it's a lie. It's not like bare shells versus this. There's kind of a gray area. They were told that they have more food than us. And then you go look at this and you're like, I've never seen this much food in my life. And this is one rando supermarket in the middle of buttfuck nowhere, right? Bumblefuck nowhere, excuse me, pardon my French. And so he's just sitting there and he's like, holy shit. Like it completely scrambled his brain.
How did that impact Yeltsin? Did that make him want to have closer ties to the West?
Well, it made him much more hostile. And Yeltsin was a big mess. Like, let's be clear. Like, there's a question there. But it made him realize, hold on. Like, this isn't like some kind of, difference of opinion, like with the NHS. Oh, should we have more spending? Should we have, deregulation or something like that? This is like, okay, I am part of a system that is built on brazen lies that is also keeping all the people in my country hungry for no fucking reason. And I think other than because this is towards the end, right? It's very hard to have people at the top who are comfortable with like, you know what? So the kids, when you see kids are hungry, you want to feed them. It doesn't matter where on earth they are. This is why, a lot of these charities like have photos of these hungry kids. It's like, it warms your heart. You're like, let me help. What can I do? So when you see this, it's like, okay, this isn't about tweaking. Like something is systemically and wrong just at a base level.